The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on New Arizona's dusty landscape. On the outskirts of Colony Zone 7, a lonely gas station stood as the only sign of civilization for miles around. Its faded blue and white paint peeled under the harsh twin suns, while old-style fuel pumps hummed quietly in the desert heat. Carlos Mendoza pulled up to the station in his battered work truck, dirt and clay caking its once white surface. His weathered hands gripped the steering wheel as he parked next to pump number 3. The construction worker's tired eyes scanned the empty lot, taking in the quiet scene. After 12 hours of working on the new atmospheric processor site, all he wanted was to fuel up and head home. He stepped out of the truck, his worn steel-toed boots crunching against the gravel. His orange safety vest was covered in dust, and his cargo pants showed signs of the day's hard labor. As he reached for the fuel nozzle, the distant whine of approaching engines caught his attention. 5 sleek hoverbikes appeared on the horizon, their chrome surfaces gleaming in the sunlight. They moved in perfect formation, floating 3 feet above the ground. The riders wore matching black leather jackets with the Centauri Defense Force insignia, a red star crossed by lightning bolts. Inside the gas station, Mary Sullivan looked up from her crossword puzzle. The young attendant had worked here long enough to know that when Centauri bikers showed up, trouble usually followed. She set down her pen and moved closer to the window, keeping one hand near the emergency beacon under the counter. The alien bikers circled the lot once before landing their vehicles. Their leader, a tall figure with pale blue skin and silver cranial ridges, dismounted first. His name was Zexvar, though most locals just called him Blue behind his back. He removed his helmet, revealing 4 solid black eyes that narrowed as he watched Carlos. Well, Zexvar said to his gang, his universal translator giving his words a metallic edge. Look what we have here. Someone's far from the authorized settlement zones. The other 4 bikers spread out, their movements practiced and predatory. 2 of them had the characteristic green scales of the Rigel system, while the others shared their leader's Centaurian features. Carlos ignored them, focusing on filling his truck. The digital display ticked upward as the synthetic fuel flowed into the tank. He'd dealt with their kind before, aliens who thought they owned every colony world just because their species had been spacefaring longer than humans. Zexvar strutted closer, his magnetic boots clicking against the pavement. Your papers, human. Show me your settlement authorization. I'm just getting fuel, Carlos replied calmly, keeping his eyes on the pump's display. Same as you. Inside the station, Mary activated the exterior cameras. The footage would automatically upload to the colony's security network if anything went wrong. She'd seen the aliens hassle humans before, but something about today felt different. That's a work vehicle, one of the Rigelian bikers noted, his forked tongue flicking between sharp teeth. Probably stolen. Look at his clothes, typical illegal settler gear. Carlos had to hold back a laugh. His construction company uniform might be dirty, but it was proper colonial-issue gear, complete with all the required safety features for atmospheric processor construction. These aliens were so caught up in their prejudices, they couldn't tell the difference between a legitimate worker and their imagined threat. Zexvar pulled out his communicator, a sleek device that projected a holographic display. I'm calling ICE. Let them sort this out. His fingers danced across the light-based interface. Unauthorized human settlement has been getting out of hand lately. Time someone did something about it. The fuel pump clicked off. Carlos replaced the nozzle and sealed his truck's tank, his movements deliberate and unhurried. He could feel the tension building in the air, thick as the planet's dusty atmosphere. The aliens were spoiling for a fight, but he wasn't going to give them one. You're making a mistake, he said simply, reaching for his wallet. The bikers tensed, hands moving to their weapons, but he slowly pulled out his credit chip to pay for the fuel. Mary watched as Carlos inserted the chip into the outdoor payment terminal. She wanted to go out and tell these aliens exactly who they were harassing, but she knew it would only make things worse. Besides, the ICE response would be entertaining enough. No sudden moves, human, Zexvar ordered, his hand resting on what looked like a sonic disruptor. ICE patrol is already on their way. They'll deal with you properly. The other bikers had fully surrounded Carlos now, their shadows stretching long in the afternoon light. They seemed disappointed that he wasn't running or fighting back. It didn't fit their narrative of the legal settlers. A high-pitched whine filled the air, growing louder by the second. A sleek silver ship descended from the clouds. its hull bearing the distinctive blue and white markings of interstellar colonial enforcement. The vessel was easily 4 times the size of Carlos's truck, equipped with the latest in colonial police technology. Zexvar smiled, his metallic teeth glinting. Now we'll see some action. ICE doesn't take kindly to unauthorized settlements. The ship landed smoothly in the gas station's lot, kicking up a small cloud of red dust. Its side door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing Officer Kevin Walsh in his pristine white uniform. The human ICE officer stepped out, his boots touching the ground with practiced ease. Carlos remained still, hands visible, as Walsh approached. The officer's eyes moved between the construction worker, the alien bikers, and the gas station, taking in the scene with professional detachment. We received a report of unauthorized settlement activity, Walsh stated, his voice carrying across the lot. Who called it in? Zexvar stepped forward, standing at his full height. I did, officer. This human's clearly operating outside authorized zones. Just look at him. Dirty clothes, beaten up vehicle, all the signs. Walsh turned to Carlos, his expression unreadable. Sir, may I see your identification? Of course, officer, Carlos replied, reaching slowly into his back pocket. He pulled out his colonial ID card and handed it over. The ICE officer's eyes widened slightly as he scanned the card with his handheld device. A holographic display sprang to life, showing Carlos's credentials, security clearances, and current assignment. Walsh looked up from the display, then back at the increasingly nervous alien bikers. Mary grinned behind the gas station window. She wished she had some popcorn for what was about to happen next. The security cameras were catching everything, and she knew this footage would be worth its weight in credits at the Colony's bar tonight. The sun continued its slow descent toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the gas station lot. A warm wind blew across the desert, carrying with it the promise of an interesting evening. The alien bikers were about to learn a valuable lesson about human civilization, one that would shake their prejudices to the core. Inside his truck, Carlos's communicator buzzed with a message from the atmospheric processor site. New equipment had arrived ahead of schedule, and they needed their lead engineer back at the facility. But that would have to wait. First, these aliens needed to understand exactly who they tried to report to ICE. The stage was set for a confrontation that would be remembered throughout Colony Zone 7 for years to come. Not because of violence or drama, but because sometimes the quietest moments lead to the biggest changes. And on this dusty afternoon at a lonely gas station on New Arizona, change was definitely in the air. Officer Walsh held Carlos's identification card in his hand, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. The alien bikers shifted uncomfortably, their earlier confidence evaporating in the hot desert air. Well, gentlemen, Walsh said, turning to face Zexvar and his gang, I believe we have a situation here, but not the one you imagined. He handed the ID card back to Carlos with careful respect. Mr. Mendoza here isn't just authorized to be in this zone. He's one of the reasons this zone exists at all. Zexvar's 4 black eyes blinked in confusion. What do you mean? He's just a dirty worker in stolen gear. Mary Sullivan stepped out of the gas station, unable to contain herself any longer. She walked over to stand near Carlos, her name tag catching the light of the setting suns. That dirty worker designed the atmospheric processor that lets you breathe out here, you blue-skinned bigot. Carlos raised an eyebrow at Mary, but didn't stop her. The young attendant had watched too many aliens harass honest workers at her station. It was about time someone spoke up. That's impossible, one of the Rigelian bikers hissed. Humans don't have the technical expertise for atmospheric processing. Everyone knows that. Walsh pulled out his tablet and projected a large hologram into the air. It showed the massive atmospheric processor under construction at the edge of the colony. The structure reached toward the sky like a modern pyramid, its surfaces gleaming with advanced technology. This is the project Mr. Mendoza is leading, Walsh explained. It's the most advanced processor ever built in this sector. And yes, it was designed by a human, the human you just tried to report as an illegal settler. The aliens stared at the hologram, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and growing embarrassment. Zexvar's blue skin darkened several shades, a sign of distress in his species. But his clothes, his truck. Zexvar gestured helplessly at Carlos's dirty work gear. You mean my site inspection uniform? Carlos finally spoke up, his voice steady and clear. I spend my days checking every inch of that processor. That means getting dirty, getting my hands on the actual work. We humans believe in understanding our projects from the ground up. Mary couldn't help but add, he comes here every day after inspections. Been doing it for months. Maybe if you'd asked him instead of jumping to conclusions, you'd have known that. The gas station's exterior lights clicked on automatically as the sun sank lower, casting long shadows across the lot. The ice ship's running lights created a blue glow that reflected off the chrome of the hoverbikes. One of the Centaurian bikers removed his helmet completely, revealing a face younger than his leaders. I don't understand. The engineering guild said humans were decades away from mastering atmospheric processing. The guilds were wrong. Carlos said simply. He pulled out his tablet and brought up the processor's schematics. Here's what makes our design different. We looked at the problem from a new angle. Instead of fighting the planet's natural systems, we work with them. The younger alien stepped forward, his professional curiosity overcoming his prejudice. The technical drawings floating in the air showed innovations that no guild engineer had considered. It was elegant in its simplicity, efficient in a way that seemed obvious once you saw it. This is remarkable, the young Centaurian admitted. But why work in these conditions? Surely a project leader should be in a clean office, directing from above. Officer Walsh chuckled. That's not how humans do things. We lead from the front. Mary watched as the tension in the air slowly transformed into something else, a reluctant respect. She'd seen it before when aliens first realized they'd underestimated humans, but never quite this dramatically. Zexvar holstered his weapon, his movements stiff with embarrassment. Aye, we may have acted hastily, Mr. Mendoza, I assumed. You assumed what your prejudices told you to see, Carlos finished for him. It's a common mistake, but expensive, when you consider that calling ICE for a false report carries a fine of 5,000 credits. The alien bikers looked at Officer Walsh in alarm. The ICE officer nodded gravely. Standard penalty for misuse of emergency services. However, he glanced at Carlos. However, Carlos continued, I'm willing to overlook it this time. On one condition. The aliens tensed, waiting for the demand. In their experience, humans could be vindictive when wronged. Next week, we're having an open house at the processor site. Engineers from all species are welcome to visit, learn, and contribute ideas. I want all of you to attend. Bring your guild contacts. Let's turn this mistake into an opportunity. Mary smiled. It was such a human response, taking an incident of prejudice and turning it into a chance for cooperation. She'd have to stock up on extra fuel for all the visitors she expected would be coming through. The young Centaurian who had shown interest in the schematics stepped forward. I'm studying engineering at the Guild Academy. Could I bring my classmates? Of course, Carlos replied. The more, the better. We humans believe knowledge should be shared, not hoarded. Maybe your fresh perspectives will help us improve the design further. Officer Walsh began entering data into his tablet. I'll mark this incident as resolved through community outreach. No fines needed. He looked at the alien bikers sternly. But let's not have a repeat, understood? Zexvar nodded quickly. Understood, officer. Mr. Mendoza, aye. He struggled with the unfamiliar words. I apologize for our behavior. The suns had nearly set now, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple. The gas station's lights created a bright island in the growing darkness, a beacon of civilization in the desert. Carlos checked his communicator, noting the time. I need to get back to the site. New equipment arrived, and my team's waiting. He turned to the young Centaurian engineer. Want to come along? See how we humans handle technical challenges. The alien's eyes widened with surprise and excitement. He looked at his gang leader, who nodded slowly. Go, Zexvar said. Learn what you can. The guild needs to know what humans are really capable of. As Carlos and the young alien climbed into the dirty work truck, Mary caught Officer Walsh's eye and winked. Another small victory for human ingenuity and openness, won not through force but through the simple willingness to prove prejudices wrong. The truck's engine rumbled to life, and Carlos pulled away from the gas station, leaving behind a group of aliens whose worldview had been permanently altered. The remaining bikers mounted their hoverbikes, their earlier arrogance replaced by thoughtful silence. Mary watched them all leave, then went back inside to update the station's log. She had a feeling the coming weeks would bring many more interesting visitors to her quiet corner of New Arizona. And maybe, just maybe, a few more minds would be changed about humanity's place among the stars. Officer Walsh lingered a moment longer, making final notes in his report. "You know," he said to Mary through the window, "days like this make me proud to be human." Mary nodded, already planning to add extra shifts to handle the inevitable increase in traffic. "Just wait until they see what else we can do," she replied with a smile. The massive atmospheric processor site buzzed with activity as Carlos's truck pulled up to the main entrance. Floodlights illuminated the construction area, creating a bubble of artificial day in the New Arizona night. The young Centaurian engineer, who had introduced himself as Krell, stared in wonder at the organized chaos before him. Workers of various species moved with purpose among the towering structures. Crawler cranes lifted massive components into place while teams of engineers checked readings on portable holographic displays. The air hummed with the sound of machinery and the chatter of dozens of languages being translated in real time. "This is different from what I expected," Krell admitted as they parked. "At the Guild Academy, they teach us that construction sites should be fully automated." Carlos stepped out of the truck, his boots crunching on the gravel. Automation is good for routine tasks. But when you're building something new, something that's never been done before, you need human intuition, or whatever your species calls that gut feeling when something's not quite right. They walked toward a large prefab building marked Project Control. Inside, screens covered the walls, showing every aspect of the processor's construction. A group of engineers huddled around one display, pointing and discussing something in low voices. "Hey boss," called out Lisa Chen, the night shift supervisor. "The new atmospheric calibration units arrived, but there's something weird about them." She paused, noticing Krell. "Who's your friend?" "This is Krell, a Guild engineering student," Carlos replied. "He's interested in learning how we do things." He turned to the young alien. "What do you know about atmospheric calibration units?" Krell straightened his posture, falling into lecture mode. "Standard units use quantum resonance to analyze and adjust atmospheric composition. The Guild designs are precise to within 0.001%. "That's the problem," Lisa said, pulling up the specifications on a nearby screen. "These new units don't match any Guild standards. They're completely different." Carlos smiled. "That's because they're human-designed. Come look at this." The three of them approached the screen, where a rotating hologram showed the internal workings of the new units. Instead of the usual complex quantum arrays, these devices used a surprisingly simple arrangement of sensors and processors. "But where's the quantum resonance chamber?" Krell asked, confused. "How can it achieve the necessary precision without one?" "It doesn't need to," Carlos explained. "We found that traditional calibration units were too precise. They fought against natural atmospheric fluctuations, wasting energy. Our design works with those fluctuations, using them to enhance the processing efficiency." Lisa pulled up another display showing the efficiency comparisons. The new units use 40% less power while achieving 95% of the precision, and are far more durable in real-world conditions. Krell's four eyes widened as he studied the data. "This goes against everything the Guild taught us about atmospheric processing. They said quantum precision was essential." "Sometimes the best solution isn't the most complicated one," Carlos said, walking over to a workbench where one of the new units sat partially assembled. "Want to help us install the first one?" The young alien's hands twitched with excitement. "You'd let me participate, without Guild certification?" "Around here, we care more about willingness to learn than certificates," Lisa said, handing him a tablet with the installation procedures. "Just follow the steps and ask questions if you're unsure." For the next 2 hours, Krell worked alongside the human engineers, helping to prepare the calibration unit for installation. He marveled at how they combined technical precision with practical problem-solving, often finding creative solutions to challenges that arose. As they worked, other engineers dropped by to check on their progress. None of them showed any surprise at seeing a Centaurian working on the project. Some even shared stories about their own experiences learning to think beyond their training. "The hardest part for me," one engineer from Mars said, "was unlearning the idea that there's only one right way to do things. Humans have a saying, There's more than one way to skin a cat. Krell looked horrified until someone explained it was just an expression. Around midnight, they finished preparing the unit for installation. Carlos led them up to the installation point, high on the processor's main tower. The view from there took Krell's breath away. The colony stretched out below them, a grid of lights in the desert darkness, while above, the stars shone with remarkable clarity. Tomorrow morning, Carlos said, this unit will help create breathable air for thousands of colonists. Some of them will be human, some Centaurian, some Rigelian, and dozens of other species. None of them will know or care about guild standards or quantum precision. They'll just breathe. Lisa checked the final readings on her tablet. All green. We're ready for morning startup. Krell touched the unit gently, feeling the subtle vibration of its processors coming online. My instructors at the guild. They'll never believe this works. Then bring them here, Carlos suggested. Let them see for themselves. That's the beauty of our approach. We don't ask anyone to take our word for it. We prove it through results. They made their way back down to ground level, where the night shift was in full swing. Workers were preparing for the morning's major systems test, their movements choreographed like a well-rehearsed dance. You know, Krell said thoughtfully, when Zexvar called ice on you, we thought we were protecting colonial standards. We never imagined that humans might have something to teach the older species. Carlos finished with a smile. It's a common mistake, but look around you. Every species here has something unique to contribute. The real innovation happens when we work together, combining different perspectives and approaches. Lisa checked her watch. Speaking of which, the joint engineering team meeting starts in 10 minutes. Want to sit in, Krell? We're discussing next month's upgrades to the thermal exchange system. The young alien's face lit up. Really? I mean, yes, absolutely. As they walked to the meeting room, Carlos noticed a message on his tablet. It was from Officer Walsh. The other bikers have been spreading the word. Expect more visitors tomorrow. Hope you're ready for questions. Carlos looked at Krell, already deep in discussion with Lisa about thermal dynamics, and smiled. This was how change happened, not through confrontation, but through shared understanding and respect. The night continued, filled with the steady progress of human ingenuity and alien curiosity working together. Above them, the massive atmospheric processor reached toward the stars, a testament to what could be achieved when prejudices were set aside and different worlds came together. And somewhere out in the desert night, a group of alien bikers was rethinking everything they thought they knew about humans and their place in the galaxy. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but for now, the work continued, one breath of processed air at a time. The next morning dawned bright over New Arizona, with both suns casting long shadows across the desert landscape. The gas station where yesterday's confrontation had taken place was already busy, but not with its usual traffic. A crowd of alien engineers, students, and curious onlookers had gathered, waiting for transport to the atmospheric processor site. Mary Sullivan could hardly keep up with the fuel demands of all the vehicles. She called in extra help, and her younger brother Pete now manned the second register. The security footage of yesterday's incident had spread through the colony's communication networks overnight, drawing unprecedented attention to the human-led project. Did you hear? Pete asked as he rang up another customer. Zexvar and his gang are outside giving directions to the processor site. Never thought I'd see those troublemakers being helpful. Indeed, the Centaurian biker leader stood near the road, his chrome hoverbike gleaming in the morning light. He pointed incoming vehicles toward the proper route, his earlier arrogance replaced by an almost apologetic eagerness to assist. At the processor site, Carlos arrived early to find Krell already there, along with a group of guild instructors. The young alien had convinced his teachers to come see the project firsthand, and they now stood staring up at the massive structure with a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. This defies conventional engineering principles, one elderly guild master declared, his silvery skin reflecting the morning light. It shouldn't work at all. And yet it does, Krell replied confidently. Watch this. He led them to a testing station where the new calibration unit they'd installed last night was running its first full cycle. The data scrolling across the screens told a story that no amount of guild doctrine could deny. The unit wasn't just working, it was exceeding expected performance metrics by a significant margin. Lisa approached with a fresh batch of readings. Morning, everyone. The new unit's already adjusted its processing algorithms to match local atmospheric conditions. Power consumption is holding at 58% below traditional systems. The guild instructors huddled around the displays, muttering among themselves in their native language. Their translator units caught phrases like impossible and against all theory, but the numbers didn't lie. As the morning progressed, more visitors arrived. The site's parking area filled with vehicles of all types, from sleek guild transport ships to rugged colony vehicles. Even Officer Walsh showed up, ostensibly to provide security, but clearly interested in seeing the project himself. Carlos organized the growing crowd into tour groups, assigning his engineers to guide them through different sections of the facility. He made sure to mix the groups, putting guild theorists with practical engineers, students with experienced workers, and aliens of different species together. The key to our success, he explained to one group, isn't just the technology. It's our willingness to question established methods and learn from each other. In the main control room, Krell had taken it upon himself to explain the calibration unit's principles to his fellow students. His enthusiasm was infectious, and soon even the most traditional guild members were asking detailed questions about the human approach to atmospheric processing. But what about quantum precision? One student asked. The guild says it's essential. Look at the actual results, Krell replied, showing them the efficiency graphs. Sometimes less precision, applied more intelligently, works better than perfect precision applied rigidly. Outside, Sexvar and his gang had arrived with another group of visitors. The biker leader looked uncomfortable in the daylight, but he stood straight as he approached Carlos. Mr. Mendoza, he said formally, I brought some engineers from my homeworld. They specialize in atmospheric systems for mining colonies. Would you show them your innovations? Carlos smiled warmly. Of course. In fact, we'd love to hear their perspective on adapting our design for mining environments. The day continued with a steady flow of demonstrations, discussions, and discoveries. In one corner, a Rigelian mining engineer suggested modifications that could improve the system's performance in high-pressure environments. In another, a human technician showed guild students how to maintain the calibration units using simple tools rather than expensive quantum aligners. Lisa organized an impromptu workshop where engineers from different species worked together to solve real problems the project had faced. The solutions they developed combined guild precision with human practicality in ways nobody had considered before. This is how progress really happens, she told the participants. Not by following manuals, but by bringing different ideas together. By late afternoon, the initial skepticism had largely given way to genuine interest and respect. Even the guild masters had to admit that the human approach, while unconventional, showed remarkable promise. Krell found Carlos near the end of the day, practically buzzing with excitement. My instructors want to establish a permanent exchange program with the project team. They say there's too much to learn here to ignore. That's wonderful news, Carlos replied. And how about you? Still planning to follow the traditional guild path? The young alien engineer shook his head. I've requested permission to intern here instead. If you'll have me, of course. We'd be glad to have you, Carlos said. In fact, we're starting a new development team next week to work on improving the thermal exchange system. Interested? Krell's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. Absolutely. I already have some ideas about combining guild thermal theory with your practical approach. As the suns began to set, the crowd slowly dispersed. The parking area emptied, but the conversations continued as visitors headed back to their colonies and ships. Ideas and possibilities flew back and forth across species boundaries, ignoring the artificial barriers that had seemed so important just a day ago. Officer Walsh approached Carlos as the last groups were leaving. Quite a turnaround from yesterday, he observed. Hard to believe it all started with a false ice report at a gas station. Sometimes the best opportunities come from the worst assumptions, Carlos replied. Those bikers thought they were protecting their territory. Instead, they helped break down barriers nobody even realized needed breaking. At the gas station, Mary watched the steady stream of vehicles heading back toward the colony. Sexvar's gang lingered near the pumps, talking excitedly about everything they'd seen. You know, the biker leader said to Mary as he paid for his fuel, we've been coming here for months, causing trouble, never realizing what was being built just down the road. Humans are not what we thought. Mary smiled as she processed his payment. We rarely are what others think we are. That's what makes life interesting, isn't it? The sun set over New Arizona, painting the sky in brilliant colors. The atmospheric processor hummed quietly in the distance, its systems working more efficiently than ever. And in offices and homes across the colony, conversations about human innovation and cooperation continued long into the night, promising a future where prejudice gave way to understanding, one mistake at a time. 3 months after the incident at the gas station, New Arizona's colony had changed in ways nobody could have predicted. The atmospheric processor project had become a symbol of interspecies cooperation, drawing visitors and students from across the sector. The old gas station, once a lonely outpost, now served as an unofficial meeting point for engineers and workers of all species. Mary had expanded the small convenience store to include a coffee shop where humans and aliens could gather to discuss ideas over drinks adapted for their various biologies. One bright morning, Carlos pulled up to his usual pump, his work truck now accompanied by several hoverbikes. Krell, who had become one of the project's star engineers, dismounted from his bike alongside Zexvar and the other former troublemakers. The new thermal exchange, Krell reported excitedly as they walked into the store. The Guildmasters can't believe we improved efficiency by another 20%. Mary greeted them from behind the counter, where she was serving a mix of human coffee and Centaurian energy drinks. The store's walls now displayed photos of the atmospheric processor's construction, including one of the day everything had changed. Your usual orders? She asked, already preparing Carlos's black coffee and Zexvar's favorite mineral supplement. The blue-skinned biker nodded, looking around at how much had changed. Sometimes I still can't believe we almost ruined everything by calling ice that day. Best mistake you ever made, Carlos said with a smile. Without that incident, we might never have broken down the barriers between our communities. The door chimed as Officer Walsh entered, now a regular visitor. He'd been reassigned to coordinate security for the growing number of joint human-alien projects spreading across the colony. Morning, everyone, he said, accepting a cup from Mary. Big day today, isn't it? Carlos nodded. The atmospheric processor project had led to something even bigger, the colony's first joint construction company, owned and operated by humans and aliens working together. Today was their official launch ceremony. The governor's coming to cut the ribbon, Krell said proudly. He had helped design the company's logo, which combined human and alien engineering symbols. Even the Guild Council is sending representatives. They gathered around one of the new tables Mary had installed, spreading out plans for their next project. The company's first contract was to build similar processors on 3 other colonies, using teams of mixed species working together. Remember how you thought humans couldn't handle advanced technology? Carlos asked Zexvar teasingly. The biker leader's skin darkened with embarrassment. We were fools, but at least we learned from our mistakes. Some species never do. Through the window, they could see more vehicles arriving. The gas station had become a popular stop for engineers and construction workers heading to various projects around the colony. Many were graduates of the exchange program that had grown out of that first day of demonstrations. Lisa walked in, carrying a tablet with the latest project updates. The guidance systems from the Guild work perfectly with our practical modifications, she reported. It's like they were made to work together. We just needed to give them the chance. Mary's brother Pete rushed in from outside. You should see this. There's a whole convoy of Guild ships landing at the ceremony site. I've never seen so many different species in one place. Carlos checked the time. We should head over. Can't keep the governor waiting. He turned to Mary. Want to come? You were there at the beginning, after all. Mary looked at her brother, who nodded eagerly. Go ahead, sis. I can handle things here. They left the gas station in a mixed group of vehicles, trucks, hoverbikes, and personal flyers all moving together toward the ceremony site. The atmospheric processor loomed ahead of them, its surfaces gleaming in the morning light, a testament to what could be achieved through cooperation. The ceremony site was packed with representatives from dozens of species. The governor, a human woman with graying hair, stood chatting with guild masters and colonial officials. Reporters from various worlds set up their equipment to broadcast the event. As Carlos and his unusual group approached, he spotted familiar faces in the crowd. Engineers who had once doubted human methods now stood proudly beside their human colleagues. Students who had learned to question guild doctrine while respecting its wisdom. Workers who had found that different approaches could complement each other perfectly. The governor called everyone to attention. 3 months ago, she began, a simple misunderstanding at a gas station led to something extraordinary. Today, we celebrate not just the success of our atmospheric processor, but the birth of a new way of working together. She gestured to Carlos and his team. These individuals prove that progress comes not from clinging to old prejudices, but from being willing to learn from each other. Their new company represents everything we hope to achieve in this colony, true cooperation across all species barriers. Zexvar leaned over to whisper to Carlos. Hard to believe you didn't punch me that day at the station. I would have deserved it. Violence doesn't solve anything, Carlos replied quietly, but giving someone the chance to learn from their mistakes, that changes everything. The ceremony continued with speeches from guild representatives, company officials, and even Mary, who told the story of watching everything unfold from her gas station window. Each speaker emphasized how a potential disaster had transformed into an opportunity for growth. After the ribbon cutting, as the crowd mingled and celebrated, Officer Walsh found Carlos near the processor's main entrance. You know, the ICE officer said, I get a lot fewer calls about unauthorized settlers these days. Seems people are more interested in working together than causing trouble. Carlos watched as Krell explained some technical details to a group of mixed-species students, his enthusiasm obvious even from a distance. Amazing what can happen when we stop assuming the worst about each other. The celebration lasted well into the afternoon. The gas station did record business as people stopped by to see where it all began. Mary had to call in extra help to handle the crowd, but she didn't mind. Every customer represented another connection made, another barrier broken. As the sun set on New Arizona that evening, the atmospheric processor continued its quiet work, producing clean air for all species. In the gas station, humans and aliens sat together, sharing drinks and stories. Outside, bikes and trucks sat side by side in the parking lot, no longer separated by prejudice or suspicion. Carlos looked around at what their mistake had built. Not just the processor or the new company, but a community where differences were seen as strengths rather than weaknesses. He smiled, knowing that sometimes the best futures come from the most unlikely beginnings. And in the growing darkness, the gas station's lights shone bright, a beacon of hope and change in the vast desert, promising that tomorrow would bring even more opportunities to learn, grow, and work together under New Arizona's twin suns. Copyright